Hello and welcome to the Law According to podcast, brought to you by 2M Legal, your partner in legal recruitment. Today, my guest is Sangeeta Rabadia, a private wealth partner with Spencer West. Sangeeta tells me about her career journey and the challenges she's faced along the way. She also has some excellent advice for those in the early stages of their legal careers who may be questioning their choices. It'd be great if you could share, like, and subscribe to the podcast. This is the Law According to Sangeeta Rabadia. Hello and welcome to the Law According to. My guest today is Sangeeta Rabadia, private wealth partner at Spencer West. Sangeeta, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So this podcast is all about your career journey to date. So let's kick off right at the very beginning. So firstly, Why did you choose law as a career?
If I'm honest, I don't know. I kind of I want to say I fell into it, but I didn't. And my journey to law actually started when I was in high school. I went on some work experiences you do in year 10 for the CPS, and I thought, oh wow, this is great, really glamorous and exciting. And so I thought, yeah, that's what I'll do. By the time I got to college, I thought, no, I'm not going to do any of that. That's really boring. And decided a career in art was the career for me. But somehow in uni, I ended up doing development studies and economics. And again, by the end of it, I just thought, okay, what am I going to do with myself? And then ended up going full circle around to law again. And so that's how I ended up in the law. Not necessarily something that I would say, absolutely focused on, but clearly it was certainly there. So, yeah, and I think it interested me. It wasn't something that I wanted to shy away from.
So you went kind of full circle, really, from starting in law initially, and then went round a little bit and circled back.
Yeah, there was a point I actually wanted to be a police officer, but my dad shut that down straight away. He just said, no, I'm not having a daughter in the police service. So being from an Asian background, he just wasn't happy with the shift work. It's like, I don't want my daughter working in the middle of the night. So I thought, okay, fair enough.
And are you pleased he made that decision for you back then now, looking back?
I don't know. I think life would have been very different, definitely, if I was it. I do sometimes wonder whether I could volunteer with something in the police services, you know, like a special constable or something. But yeah, I'm very happy with the career path that I have eventually chosen. So no regrets in that respect.
Excellent. So looking back to your early years, if you like, going through training and things, through education and training, what were the kind of major challenges that you faced back then?
You know, it's so I come from a background where my family, there was very few, no people in my family that worked in a professional profession. So I didn't have any access to any type of profession, let alone the legal industry. So it was all new to me in terms of what should I be doing? Who should I be speaking to? What work experience should I be achieving? Even what sort of subject should I be choosing for my electives in law school? All of that was new. There was nobody there to act as a mentor or a guide. So it was really almost just trying to figure it out yourself. That was the most difficult thing in not having anybody guiding me in what to do. And then once law school was finished, again, it was trying to understand the legal industry, how one gets entry into the legal industry, what different professions there are in the legal industry, and just, you know, what type of firm or what type of role would be what I would be most suited for. All of those conversations that we would now perhaps have with careers advisors or lecturers, mentors, none of that was there for me. So it was really hard for me to, whilst I thought, yes, I want to be a lawyer and I want to do law, I had absolutely no idea how to achieve that.
So who did you turn to for that information? Where did you go to kind of look at the paths available?
It was all really haphazard. So law school, I went to BPP law school, and we had an ambassador scheme. So we had a few schemes that gave access to and support to people who were from a background or a non-legal background, so where we didn't know somebody, and a trainee solicitor was assigned to me to try and support me in terms of understanding and navigating training contracts. And
Right. Okay.
and I think I still think I was naive. So she was very helpful in explaining, this is how you get a training contract, this is what you need to do to achieve it. But I think I was still very naive in thinking that I'm a good student, I'm academic, I've got decent grades, and therefore it should be relatively easy for me to then get to a decent, respectable job. But in reality, that's not how it works. It doesn't matter that your academics are good. There's now a breadth of criteria that's needed in addition to academics to then get into a respectable law firm. And also you have to remember, when you're in law school and university, when you attend all the law fairs, you get lots of law firms that are big, glamorous, magic circle firms. The firms that only give training contracts to the very elite, if you like, or outstanding. And so you go in there thinking, wow, great, I'm going to be a commercial lawyer and I'm going to travel the world and I'm going to earn lots of money and it's going to be great. And then, feet hit the ground and you realize, actually, no, that's not a reality for everybody. So it was hard, and eventually the way I actually got a training contract was through word of mouth, and through a friend of a friend.
Okay.
So I did lots and lots of applications, and it was very disheartening. It got to a point where I actually did consider leaving the law. I had a part-time job in a supermarket, and I just thought, you know what, the law is not working for me. Why don't they had an internal managerial program? I just thought, right, if this is not going to happen for me within a year, I'm leaving and the law completely, because it got to a point where it becomes, when you do so many training contracts and you have either no response at all or absolute rejections, it does become very disheartening, and you do start, self-doubt creeps in, and you wonder whether this is the profession for you, whether this is something that you should be doing. And so I gave myself a short amount of time, and I just said, if it doesn't happen for me within this time frame, then I'm leaving. And it just so happened that in that time period, a friend of a friend was looking for a paralegal. I applied and I got the job. And I thought, okay, the universe is speaking, so maybe I need to give myself a little bit more time. So I gave myself a little bit more time. And I was fortunate that the same firm then did offer me a training contract. But it took time. It took time, and it didn't meet my initial expectations. And I think that was part of the disappointment, is that we leave law school or we leave academia having particular expectations of the industry itself, but also of us in terms of what we're going to achieve and when we're going to achieve it. You almost have a timeline. And so that was a disappointment when I didn't achieve in the manner that I thought I was going to.
Yeah, I hear that quite a lot. It's quite a challenge, the perception or the expectation to the reality. There's such a great divide, isn't there, in many cases, as to how quickly that process will come about when you actually leave education and join a firm, or get on a training contract. So it's obviously it's good that you did continue with that. I wonder how close you actually came to taking that supermarket job.
I did. I mean, and I was very close. I'll be very honest. I was very close to taking the supermarket position, but I think it also, in hindsight, is obviously a great thing in terms of, had I known what I know now, then I perhaps the journey might not have seemed as difficult as it was. So if I had the opportunity, and I would tell my younger self, well, actually, don't worry about it. Go with the flow. See where you go. Don't put so much pressure on yourself to achieve. I think we have this expectation, especially with social media and just the way the world is, where now, if you don't have immediate success, or if things don't happen immediately, then for some reason that's a failure, and that's obviously not necessarily the case. And we just forget that behind success there's a lot of hard work, there's a lot of perseverance, there's blood and sweat, and it's very difficult to see that now, in this era, with things happening so quickly, instantaneously, things being accessible instantaneously, social media, everybody showing us their successes and how great they're doing, and no, and very rarely do we have anybody saying, look, actually I got this wrong, or this hasn't worked out for me. And so, you know, and there's also this expectation that when you leave law school, you have an abundance of experience, but yet you're a little baby. I mean, you haven't had a chance to go and work for anybody else. You've not had a chance to actually understand what a real working environment is like. But yet, big firms and employers have an expectation that you will be great from the beginning. And so I think there's obviously a lot more that can be done, but I think for me and for my younger self, I would just say, don't put that pressure on yourself. Don't worry about it. If it's going to happen, it will happen. And eventually you will find your place and you will be exactly where you're meant to be, even if it's not what you had thought it was going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice for your younger self there, and I'm sure it'd be people will be able to relate to that as well. I'm sure they'll take that on board. So since that moment in time, you've obviously built a career in law. You've had successes. What would you say were your key successes that made you realise, yes, this is the career for me?
You know, at the beginning of my career, actually, a family member found themselves in a really dire situation. It was really sad to the extent I was doing my training contract, and a family member was about to lose their house because they had been the victim of mortgage fraud.
Oh, wow.
And it was
okay.
it was just a really horrible situation for them to find themselves in. You know, 3 young children, no way of repaying it, and the mortgage company was very much aware that a fraud had taken place, but still insisted that they wanted their money back from this family member. It was just, you know, and having that sort of case so early on in my career and actually being able to achieve a brilliant result. You know, we managed to tell the mortgage company to go away. We managed to get all that resolved for the family member, and that, you know, seeing the impact that had on that particular family member, because obviously I was entrenched, they're a family member, so you know, you get the calls in the middle of the night where they're all really waking up really worried, sweat, because they can't sleep, because they're worried about what's going to happen to them and the future of their children, and then coming on the other side and saying, you know what, don't worry, the house is yours, you're safe. I think that was, this is where I want to do, this is where I want to be.
That's amazing, that because obviously although with your clients you would see the outcome, you've obviously seen the actual impact of the outcome as well, because you're so close to the situation. That's amazing.
It's, I mean, for clients, you obviously, so I'm a private wealth lawyer, so I'm very close to my clients. It's my job to be close to my clients. It's my job to understand them, their families, their dynamics, their jobs. So, you know, I probably, in comparison to other lawyers, I'm a lot more invested in my clients generally. But by doing that, the satisfaction of a good result at the end of the day is, you know, it's just a little bit extra. You know, that little, you have that little extra twinkle and that extra leap in your foot when you think, oh great, that's a great result.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people forget about the actual interpersonal relationships that you build with clients during your career, and I think that's one of the things, from what I hear. I don't work in law, but one of the things I hear is that's the key to developing, isn't it? Obviously, you come out of academia, you have all these great academic skills, but not necessarily the interpersonal skills and how to deal with certain relationships. And that's, you know, that's obviously a challenge in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a skill, and I think that will maybe define, if you're early in law, how you interact with clients or how you want to interact with clients will probably define where you best fit in law. So if you're the sort of person who really enjoys client interaction or personal interaction, then departments or industries like private client, what I do, or perhaps conveyancing or immigration, public health, you know, mental health, those sort of departments might be best suited for you. But if you're the sort of client where you think, actually, can I get at least, you know, the least possible interaction with the client as possible, then you might find something that is more paper based, is better, or maybe even in-house. In-house you only have one client to deal with, which is
Yes,
the company that you're working for. So it's a lot bit more easier. But paper-based, like contractual, sometimes might be a bit better suited. But I do find that irrespective of what area of law you specialize into, you do need to have an element or an understanding of interaction, whether it's with clients, whether it's with staff members, employees, employers. You're always going to have person-to-person interaction, and there's always a skill in how you navigate those relationships depending on what the relationship is, because it's not always going to be great. You might have difficult conversations with clients because things aren't going the way that they expected to, which might not necessarily be your fault. It's just the way that the case is panning out. Or it may be with staff, HR, the boss, because targets aren't where they're supposed to be. So you're always going to need to have some sort of person-to-person interaction.
Being able to manage those relationships.
Yeah.
So what would you say you love most about working in law?
Good question. So I think it's the technicality. So working with people is great. As I said, achieving those results and seeing how the impact it has. But the technicality of the law, so picking up a case and thinking, oh, it seems like it's a standard. One of the things I do is if people aren't happy with wills, we help clients dispute the inheritance that they received. And you pick it up and you think, okay, fine, this is a standard will dispute. But then when you read into it and you find, oh, actually, there's a technical element of it because the law says this, and how are we going to interpret it? How are we going to do this, and how are we going to present this case? So that technical element is quite exciting for me, I think.
You like the technical aspects?
Yeah, it's quite geeky, I know, but I think working in law, you have to enjoy certain aspects of the law, otherwise you might be in the wrong profession.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with being geeky. Ultimately, geeks kind of rule the world at the end of the day, don't they?
Well, here's hoping.
So I know you gave you talked earlier about the advice you'd give to your younger self. Other than being patient and not putting too much pressure on yourself, what other advice would you give somebody at the early stages of their career who may be finding it a little bit of a challenge, kind of questioning their decisions, if you like? What would you say to them to help them kind of find the way forward?
I think it'd be twofold. First, I'd say let's be realistic. It's not an easy. It's not easy. Okay, I don't want to sugarcoat anything. Some younger lawyers do have it very easy in the sense that it works out for them a lot better than you expect it to. But for somebody who's in my position, it's not easy. You have to put in the hard work. And so what I would say is don't shy away from the hard work. If you're expected to put in a couple of extra hours within reason, have that expectation, put that in. I would also say put yourself out there. Sign up to as much as you can without burning out. So a lot of the things that I did was I did a lot of networking very early on in my career, and the dividends are paying off now. It's not something that you see then, but they're paying off now. And one of the things that it did help me with early on in my career is it gave me a much more informed knowledge of the legal industry and the sector. Didn't necessarily help me with the case I was working on at that point in time, but what it did is it gave me a better understanding of the legal industry as a whole, how things work, what people like, what people don't like, what my options are for a career progression, whether it gave me opportunity to consider whether I'm at the right law firm, whether I'm doing the right area of law. And so really going out there, going to events, networking, whether it's CPD seminars and going out there and listening to something, or whether it's a webinar, a seminar, or whether it's networking events, just hi hellos for other stakeholders within the legal industry. I would really say as much as you can, sign up. Obviously, as I said, don't overdo it. But the more you do, the better you will become in terms of able to manage your own expectations. And so the more realistic your goals will be and the more achievable they will be.
That's excellent advice. I like the fact that you say about getting out, because that's sometimes that networking is taking people outside their comfort zone, isn't it? And the more you do it, the more you start to become comfortable with that. Maybe not necessarily comfortable is the wrong word, but at least used to being in that environment where you're meeting people maybe for the first time. And yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice. Similar in our industry, the more you can get out and meet people, the better it is.
It's a skill in itself, isn't it? To go out there and put yourself out there. It is, if it's not something that you've done regularly and something that you're not comfortable with, it's a very vulnerable position to find yourself in, and to go out there and say, hi, hello, my name is, and I do this. Would you like to have a conversation with me? And I've been doing it for years, and I still find it nerve-wracking when I go into a new event that I'm not familiar with and I don't know anybody. I still stand in the corner sometimes thinking, right, how are we going to navigate this room? What do I need to do? Can I go home? And so it is, but it does then, by just attending, you do create skills or soft skills that you don't think about, and it does make you a better lawyer. And I don't know how much, I don't know what you think about this, but now there's a lot of expectation on lawyers to bring in work themselves. It used to be that junior lawyers would just do the work, and the partners would be the ones responsible for bringing in the work and just supervising and making sure that the work was to standard. But now it doesn't matter what position you have, whether you're a trainee solicitor, a newly qualified solicitor, or a partner, everybody is expected to business develop and encourage new avenues of work coming into it. And that's a lot of pressure for somebody who hasn't been in the industry for a long time. And I personally think it's an unreasonable expectation, but not every firm is going to see it that way. And so what I would suggest is, even if the work isn't coming in, network, because you're building relationships. When you're going out for coffee with, in my case, a financial advisor or an accountant, then you might not ever see that person for another year. You might not see them for a couple of years, but there might come a point where both of you remember each other and think, actually, I might have something which we can collaborate on. Would you like to catch up again? And that's going to help you the further down that you go in your career. So networking is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know my little tip? I'm exactly the same. I find it very difficult to walk into a room, and especially if there's already a group kind of having a conversation. My tip, one thing I've found is I find the coffee or tea station quite a good place for an icebreaker. So normally a good place. Normally there's a few people around there.
Yeah.
There's always, you can get a good conversation started there. Even if it's just a fairly throwaway comment, it can be quite easy to get a conversation going from the tea or coffee station.
Yeah, I just make a comment about the tea that they've chosen. Oh, look, that sounds really exciting. Maybe I'll try that next one. Just something as small as that, to say that's the tea I'm going to try next.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then it's just a handshake and say, hello, my name is, and
it goes from there, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And everybody's in the same boat. We've just got to remember that, even if you're speaking to somebody who's 20, 30 years senior to you, the fact is they're speaking to a new person. So, and they don't know anything about you. They don't know what expectations you're going to have of them, in the same way you don't know what expectations they're going to have of you. So it doesn't matter who you're speaking to. The nerves are always going to be there. And I think I find it helpful to know that there are others in the same boat as me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think people perceive others, whether it be from a seniority point of view or how they look or whatever it is, that they aren't necessarily in the same space as you, but most are. There's very few people who are comfortable walking into a room full of strangers and actually owning it. There's not very many people who are like that, I think. Once you understand that, I think it makes it easier for you to do it as well.
Yeah, I think when you understand, that old cliche, like when you're public speaking, imagine everybody naked, just to kind of calm you down. I wouldn't necessarily say that for a room full of people, but just the idea of, everybody is in the same boat in one way or the other. It might not be the exact same boat, but it's a similar one,
Yeah,
and so another great tip that I use is I take a wing person with me. So I drag somebody along with me who, so then if there is somebody that I'm not comfortable speaking to, then I'll spend 5 minutes just speaking to the person that's with me, and then we'll encourage each other to edge into a conversation with somebody.
You'll motivate each other. Yeah, good. Yeah, excellent. I think it's a really big part of the job, isn't it? Of course, and like I say, same in our industry. So, if somebody would like to get in contact with you about your services, how can they do that, Sangeeta?
So they can email me, or I'm very happy for anybody to give me a call. Do you want me to give you my email address? Would that help?
You can either give your email address, or I can pop it. This will go onto YouTube, so we can pop it into the comments on YouTube.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so I'm very happy to receive emails and talk to anybody who might have questions, even if it's, Sangeeta, I saw your podcast and you said this. How do I go about getting on with it? I'm very happy. So whether you phone me or you email me, I'm very happy to be contacted.
That's excellent. Well, Sangeeta, thank you very much for your time. I think it's been really interesting hearing your story, and you particularly, I think you've given some great advice to junior lawyers or people at certain stages of their career where they can kind of, like I say, certainly relate to the situation you've been in. So I really appreciate your time. Thanks very much for joining me on the podcast.
No problem. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.